Well, hello everyone and welcome to my coverage of round 4 of the candidates tournament. Some extremely exciting pairings today after a rest day, so they should be coming out all ready for battle. And the pairings in this round were as such at the top of the page here. Fabiano, after losing to Ding, has a key game against one of the co-leaders, Nepo. Then we have Wang Hao, who's one of the surprise leaders, playing against the bottom mark, Alexenko, a game he wants to win. MVL, another joint leader with White against Grishchuk. And then can Ding keep his mini roll going by playing against Giri? And we'll come to the pairings in round 5 a little bit later. So here were the standings before we go into this 4th game. And if you think every player, and there's 8 of them, has to play each other twice, so I make that 14 games in total in round 4. So it's important moments. And there's 3 leaders, Nepo, MVL and Wang Hao. So the game I'm mainly going to concentrate on today, but I'm going to show you highlights from each of the games so you get a full coverage of this round, is the game Fabiano, Caruana versus Nepo. And I thought this was a key game beforehand because Caruana has now just come out of a loss. We've seen how incredibly well prepared he is, and in this game he's facing Nepo, who's had a very good tournament. So it's obviously important to both players, but Fabiano is going to be coming at Nepo, but can Nepo hold him off? So Fabiano starts now not with the normal move that he's been famous for, I'd say, E4, but with D4. And this is quite rare for Fabiano to play this move, but obviously being a top player, he can play all openings. And one thing I think is becoming clear is that he's prepared this move just for the candidates, and he's saved up a lot of his secrets. Now, Nepo starts by playing G6, and after Knight C3, 2 choices here, King's Indian Defence with Bishop G7, or the more popular move at top level now, played by MVL, Peter Svidler, top players nowadays, pawn to D5, the Grunfeld opening. And the Grunfeld has been played by many great players, and it's never been refuted, and it gives Black very active play, and Black can sometimes get a chance to win, if White overextends in this dynamic opening. Now the main line was played. White takes on D5, plays E4, and after the capture on C3, we should take stock of the position. White has a very good centre here, and this is what White is aiming on using to give him an advantage. Often, if he can contain the centre, he can bulldozer through the middle, or he can transfer to other area of the boards, normally mainly the king side. You could say G6 is a little weakness and try to attack there. What is Black doing? Well, Black is, and this is what you're trying to do in the Grunfeld, is trying to prove that the centre is maybe overextended by mainly attacking D4, C5, Bishop G7, Knight C6, pressurizing the centre of the board. So the game now continued with standard play, Bishop G7, Bishop C4, and this is the first time not the first time, but the last time I think Fabiano played this was 10 years ago or something. It's really a rare move, the Botvinnik variation, and it's one of the most aggressive ways to play against the Grunfeld. I mean, Caruana has proven already that he's the best prepared player here in the candidates. He's really scary with the white pieces, and even with Black, he's coming out with great novelties. So he clearly wants to get in that World Championships, and his team has done a great job. This move, Bishop C4, played by Botvinnik, Kasparov, is an aggressive attempt to play. The bishop is on a very good diagonal, pointing at Black's king. And also, we can now put on knight on E2. One of the other main lines is knight to F3, but at some point after some standard play, not here often, but at some point Black can pin this knight. And this helps black's plan of attacking d4. This is the main idea in the Grunfeld. So bishop c4 is quite logical. You develop a piece aggressively, and you want to put the knight on e2. And if bishop g4, then you can play f3. And this knight remains a good piece on e2 when you move it there. So quite logical stuff. c5 from black. The Grunfeld, you have to play this move as black. You have to attack white center. You can't play without this move. And now knight to e2, just to demonstrate that move. This is completely irrelevant because of f3 now. So the main line here, castles, and I've played this position many times, and I've played castles. There is another plan here which some of the more adventurous of you might want to play. You can probably guess what it is. I mean, you know me. I've played this plan before, and it is h4. And this is actually, being seen in many games. And the simple idea is just to open up the black king and checkmate it. When it's quite dangerous for black. If black now continues by playing something like this, bishop e3, and this is the standard move, then now plays slowly, let's say with b6, as we're going to see in the main game, h5 can lead to real problems for black. Bishop b7, and we can see this bishop being very strong, pinning that pawn. And here, all white needs to do is get a queen on this file, and it will be checkmate. And that is often, I've won lots of games on this. I won one game against Boris Avruk in this similar kind of idea. The downside of this plan for white, and David Howe played this against me, is after this, black needs to know this plan. Black can take here, flick a check in. You don't want to swap queens because you're going for mates. You don't want to move the bishop. You have to go here, and now queen a3. And this is known to be a very crafty idea. The point being h5, and now bishop g4. And in this position, the move you want to play, f3, is not very good because the queen takes e3. And this is why this queen is very active. So quite sharp stuff here. But it's also been found that this plan, if black knows what he's doing, is not so scary. So castles is the main line. Black increases his pressure against d4, and white defends that one. And now b6, the bishop is often considerably better on b7. Black is playing this idea of counter-striking from the sides. Queen to d2. And this is again very logical. White wants to swap off this bishop, which is very annoying, which will strengthen white's centre and give white chances to attack the black king. And he's getting ready to connect the rooks in the centre of the board. Bishop b7, and now rook fd1. And I haven't really seen this move before myself. I mean, I've tried many other ideas in this position, including f4, quite interesting, trying to go f5, and even h4. So rook fd1 is quite a normal move, though, because you are just trying to consolidate your main central point. And often in this opening, the Grunfeld, it was Jonathan Rowson, 3-4 times British champion, who wrote a book on this, and he called this pawn Delroy. I know I've got Harry, but Rowson has Delroy. And this is something that white can often win lots of games from, if he can go d5, e5, d6. And this pawn can often queen. This is one of white's main things. So rook behind Delroy seems very logical. Black now captures here with the idea of playing rook c8, so rook c1, logical, and trying to get play on the queen side. Fabiano clearly in his preparation now. He was still playing quickly with bishop d7, and black now connects the rooks, and now h4. There was a lot of h4s today, and h5s. And this is completely the right plan. It's like I said earlier on, when you have a strong centre, you have two options. You can try to use that centre, or you can use it as a space-gaining mechanism to attack on other areas of the board. And white is clearly trying to attack on the king side because that's where black is weakest. He only has one piece there, and this little pawn can be used to attack and push black around over there. So it's a very normal way to play, actually, especially when black has fianchettoed and black's pieces are on the other side of the board. So black now made some exchanges, and the pawn kept pushing on. And we got this position here after queen c8. And I think this should be okay for black, but it's slightly more uncomfortable for him. For example, h6 was played, and after bishop f8, this pawn is a real thorn in black's side. White now decided to push on with Delroy, And this is getting a little bit tricky for black. White has more space, and if the queen comes off, you will take with a knight, and this knight will come around. And black's a little bit cramped here. If he ever plays e6, this pawn on e6 is now weak and can be a target. So a little bit more uncomfortable for black after bishop f8. d5. e6 was played immediately, so now the queen can take on e6 if it's captured. So white plays knight c3 to support this one. And after knight c4, he simply takes this knight off. It was too strong, that piece. So black has two bishops, but this pawn is really quite scary. And after queen d2, we can see that Delroy has a very simple plan. So black took this one off first, and now knight takes. And again, white can combine his ideas now of kingside attack. He decides to take with the knight because taking with the pawn may allow stuff like bishop b4. So knight takes did occur, and after bishop takes, now pawn takes. And we get an interesting position here where it should be equal, but it's slightly more difficult for black, of course, because if this pawn can ever go up one square, black is in serious trouble. So black has to deal with his pawn, and also the pawn on h6 gives white all ideas of coming to g7 in particular variations, especially when the bishop on f8 moves. On black's side, black's got an active queen, and he has got a blockade, and he's got potential to get a pass pawn over here. But at the moment, it's clearly white who has a slight advantage. So queen b4 is a good move, trying to, hold this square. And now queen d3. And they move their queens around a little bit. And eventually, white finds the correct plan here. Queen d1. Stopping any checks on this file and just getting ready to, storm the pawn up the board. If black greedily takes on a2 after d6, there's no way black can stop Delroy coming forwards. So this is definitely tricky here. Bishop d6 played, and now this is a blockade, but it's only a temporary blockade. So white now has to try to get rid of this bishop, and Fabi finds the correct plan, g3. The idea of this at some point is to play bishop to f4, swap off this bishop. In a pure queen ending, when there's only queens on the board, the side who has the passed pawn nearly always has the winning chances, even if you're a pawn down often. So if you can get the bishops off here for white, this passed pawn will give white extremely good opportunities, especially now that there's always ways to try to come in like this. And here is a very interesting moment. Well, after black's move king to f8, black is trying to help the blockade here. Black clearly in some trouble here. And now another moment where white goes wrong. Fabiano plays queen to f3, and this is really peculiar. It's like yesterday, or the last round where he played h6, if you can remember that move. He's played a great opening, he's played very well, he's got in a position where he should all of a sudden be comfortable, and as soon as he's got in a position where he's comfortable, like here, where the king is weak, this h pawn is weak, there's a passed d pawn, so Fabiano should really be winning this game 90% of the time. He plays a bad move. Queen f3. And this is quite weird for Fabiano. So he's playing very well, but he's also playing badly. He's playing brilliantly at stages, but then it's always one move which is just letting things slip. And he possibly gave this, this game against Ding, this game away. And in this position, after queen f3, it's not easy for him. Now, why didn't he just put the queen on a central square? Queens are very good in the centre, threatening to come into g7 or to h8, and keep supporting the d-pawn. Queens belong in the centre of the board. Had he played this move, he would have been major favourite to win this game. I mean, I'm not really sure what Nepo does. The white king is very safe on g2, and the queen is just coming in. And Nepo might have to play something like king e7, but there's all sorts of things to worry about here. Queen g7, even check, queen d8, threatening some mate ideas. This position is really hard for black. think if you lose that pawn, Harry will queen. So this is really strange. And he plays this queen f3 move, and all of a sudden, after check and f5, Magnus Carlsen was commentating, and I was watching his commentary, and he was saying, well, this is really peculiar. Black, if anything, is suddenly better here. If anything, it's probably equal. Because the white queen has no way in now. It can't come to any square. Black has blockaded things. His king can be very useful in the ending. And it's not clear what white's doing. For example, g4 was played, and now we have an ending that comes about after queen e4. And this ending here is probably a draw, but it's very slightly better for black. Because now this pawn is blockaded, and black has an idea eventually of getting an outside passed pawn with this idea. And this will draw the white king away from that, leaving his other pawns very weak. So this position is probably a draw, but it's not easy. Magnus suggested bishop to f8 here, with the idea of trying to put another white pawn on a dark square, because now black's bishop can attack it, and then just trying to come to d6 with the king. And this would have maybe turned the game around somewhat. In the end, the game continued with some logical moves. Now black is trying to get this passed pawn, and he does get the passed pawn. And after this move here, he can't come in white, so it's still a bit of pressure here. But eventually it becomes clear that there's just not enough material on the board for it to be a win. So, you know, Fabi does go into defensive mode and does a good job of defending this one. And you can see black can't make progress, so it's a draw. So that was my game of the day. Quite an intriguing draw there. One move threw it away for Fabiano, but he did come back and defend. He's very good mentally like that. Nepo, some chances in the ending there. Now, what about the other games? Well, I'm just going to go for a moment maybe in each of the other games. I'm not going to go through them all from the start. It takes a bit too long. We have Ding versus Anish Giri. And this game was very interesting because in this position here, Giri came very well prepared. I would say Fabiano and Giri are the two best prepared players. And look what he does. He does h5. And he does a plan that is very similar to the Nepo plan. Nepo, was faced by Fabiano pushing his h-pawn up the board against the fianchetto position. And this is precisely what black does. And I was looking at this position, and after bishop d7, black decided to take on g3, and the h-pawn hadn't really done that much, and it went on to be a draw, simplifying. I was wondering here, instead of this, could black, because the only thing about black's position is he could do with his queen over here to attack. Could he have played queen g4? Getting the queen to the right area of the board. And my idea is to go queen h5, and then bring the bishop in to f3 and h3, and try to get my queen to g2. Let's just say you take this pawn. I mean, I could play h3 now, move the bishop, and the other way I can play, because if I go here now, there is a knight to f4, is to put the bishop on e4. So bishop f5 to e4, but obviously you have sacrificed a pawn. But if white's not careful, let's say white tries to grab this pawn, then white will lose, because the whole point of my plan is this idea. So that would have been an interesting moment, but it did end in a draw, that one. Now, MVL versus Grischuk was a Berlin ending again. And if we zoom forwards, it was quite a tactical Berlin, actually. And the problem here, it's the same problem that we've seen Grischuk face so many times. His position was fine, but he got down to his last minute. And as soon as he got down to his last minute, around this point of the game, he starts to struggle. And we can see here that, this position has some winning chances for white, because white has this fantastic passed pawn. But after a5, Grischuk managed to get enough play just by the simple idea of threatening this pawn down the board. So maybe a bit of a lucky escape for Grischuk. Wang Hao against Alexenko. Wang Hao was pressing with the white pieces, and at some point he managed to get a bit of pressure. If we dive into the position around here, he got some pressure with his c pawn. And there was a little tactical moment where he now played e4 immediately, quite a clever move after D takes. This was a position where he could have tried a move such as G4. Again, a suggestion of Magnus. I like suggesting Magnus moves today, don't I? He's pretty good. And this would have been very interesting, this kind of position here. Maybe some more winning chances, even though he's a pawn down. This pawn is extremely dangerous. It can't really win the game yet because black is covering it. But if you combine this pawn with other ideas like knight here, rook takes h7, bishop c4, and you know, this could have been tricky. Instead of this move, g4, Wang Hao took on e4. And after some tactics, it becomes clear, and this is all a tactical little sequence, that this position should just, and it does become a draw. Black has 2 pawns for the exchange, but black has no weaknesses, and he does totally the right thing. He puts his pawns on the right squares. And I say the right squares because f2 is now very weak. The only way white can win this position is if he gets his king to g8 and then plays rook takes h7. Otherwise, black is just going to sit here, move the bishop backwards and forwards. And now, as soon as his king starts wandering up the board, black will start munching these pawns. If white ever plays f3, well, the more pawns you exchange, the more drawn it becomes. So it's an easy draw. And you can even play after f3, e3 here if you want to draw. Because again, the white king can't come up the board because his pawn will queen. So 4 draws in this round, but some interesting draws. And now we have a look at the results after that round. And we can see that there's 3 players on 2.5 points. The tiebreak is pretty irrelevant, but we have MVL, Nepo, and Wang Hao. Not much has changed. Fabiano Grischuk in with a shout then. So, you know, everyone's in with a shout. But there's only 1 point between last and first. And this is the exciting thing about the candidates. It could really come down to the wire. Now, do remember, please like and subscribe to this channel. Could really do with that. Any likes, any subscribes, it helps me out. And leave your comments below on who you think will win the candidates. Who do you think will qualify? And also, who do you want to qualify? Cheers for now. I'll see you again after tomorrow's round.